So we start out this morning with the travails of David and Saul. Saul's got a mental problem, and he's bound and determined to kill David. And normally you would think that David would do likewise if he had the chance. And he was given the chance at least twice. And both times he chooses not to. The only reason that he did not do that was because Paul was king, because God has chosen to make him king. And if I were to kill Saul, then I would be going against God's design. And David was not about to do that. Those noble thoughts, all in line with today's gospel. Tough gospel. Difficult to live, huh? Love your enemy, do good, turn the cheek, forgive. Keep on the journey to the promised land. We spend a lot of time plotting revenge and retribution against those who in one way or another have done us wrong, right? At least it's my history. I find it difficult, though, to focus on the love and power of God if I'm harboring get-even plans against a fellow human being. It just isn't right, you see, for him to get away with what he did. Somebody has to pay for my anguish and pain and for making me wander in the darkness, breathing threats of pain and retribution. That's what goes in the back of your brain, at least mine. And I suspect I'm not alone here. So, when one really gets down to basic, does it really matter whether you get retribution or not? If the other party is guilty, then God will exact justice, right? That's one thing guaranteed in this life. Justice will prevail in the end. Ask Hitler or Stalin or Mayo. Then ask the millions who died because of these three men. And I'll guarantee that the victims of these three guys are much better off than the perpetrators. You see, we're in it for the long game. And the long game says, in part, to keep in your own lane, to love and to be loved, to forgive and be forgiven. But really, it does matter what you and I do. Now, the gospel ends with this phrase that I've always liked. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over. For the measure you measure with will be measured back to you. I like the rhythm of that. I like the context of the words. It just flows right. But I have to admit, most of the time I have no idea what they're talking about. But I like it, though. It's rhythmic. But I had to really come to grips with it because I'm preaching today. And I'm still not sure, but probably loses something in modern day thought, because today we seldom buy produce or whatever in 50 or 100-pound sacks. And we really don't get involved with the sacks are packed carefully and all that bit. Mary said, well, you can think about it, a scoop of coffee that you put in a coffee pot. And you there's going to be good coffee, so you got to take the scoop and you got to bevel it off perfectly, and you're going to get the perfect cup of coffee. Well, maybe. But I think really deep down it relates to how one lives their life. Do we have a code to live by? Is it a good code, and do we follow it? David had a code, and that was not to mess with the Lord's anointed. It worked pretty good until Bathsheba showed up on the rooftop. But that was David's problem. He got right with God at the end. Our problem is that often in modern man, we have no codes. We drift as the wind blows. Not a big deal if only a few are codeless, but once a country has a majority of people have no relationship with God, then look out below. Because there's nothing to stop the population as a whole. They just go crazy in one direction or another. and bad things can and do happen. That's why we're here this morning, to remember the long game, to keep in our own lane, to love and be loved, to forgive and be forgiven. If this and everything else, it's like wind blowing down the dark canyon in the dark of the night. We're called to seek the sun. We're called to seek the beauty of God. We're called to seek the Holy Spirit. And we're called to follow the words of Jesus. Forgive and be forgiven. Don't get caught up with pettiness. Just remember that beyond that river of time is a land that is so beautiful and tremendously beautiful, powerful. And we're called to pass that river and to succeed on that other side. And that's why we're here this morning. You all have a good day.